So we're going to talk now about supramaximal weight release hooks. So the different meaning that I have a weight on the bar cumulatively between the bar and the weight release hooks that's heavier than what my rep max would be, right? So again, if I can back squat 100 kilos, I want to override that. I want to be heavier than that. Now it doesn't have to be crazy, right? When people walk out with supramaximal weight, that is a huge, huge thing on the system. A lot of people are very, very intimidated by their 1 RM weight. It takes a lot of prep, a lot of mental rehearsal to get comfortable stepping out with a maximal weight. You add to the element of these things swinging, right? These things will move. And we talked about this with accommodating resistance, that this idea of bands and chains, there's a feel for it. There's a timing component. There's a learning how to walk out with the barbell. Right? Anytime we add more things to think about, we should be really, really responsible with adding weight. So supramaximal could be 2% greater than what their 1 RM is. Again, my 100 kilo back squat max, okay, maybe I have a weight on here that is 90 kilos, and then I have 12 and a half cumulatively on here, right? So 6 and a quarter. Or maybe I want to start to stretch that out and get more weight on here. So instead of putting 90 on here, I put 70 on here. And now I want to think out potentially 32 and a half. Right? Whatever it is my 1 RM and whatever is the weight on here, relatively speaking to here, we can either increase that eccentric overload or increase that concentric effect. And we just got to think about where they're going to be more confident with and what you're going to be more confident with, be able to explain it as. Remember, we're only as good as what we can execute. So if you're thinking super maximal, it's just got to be heavier than what their max is with some weight on here. And the means of getting to that is something you need to think about in terms of where I can be successful on that given day. I like to start off with as probably a consistent bar weight here and then increasing this. So if I was going to go to you, hey athlete, if I was going to ask you to hit a single for 70 kilos, relatively speaking to your 100 kilo max, would you feel comfortable with that weight in the bar? Absolutely. Okay, great. I'm going to add these weight release hooks on top of that. So I'm going to accumulate 32 and a half kilos, or maybe even keep it simple, 35 kilos. So I got 17 and a half, 17 and a half. So that's 105% of my 1 RM. Now, as we start to build up, I get 70 kilos here, and then I start to add weight here. Start off with maybe 10 kilos, work up to 20 kilos, work up to 25, 30 kilos, and then I get to my work set, 35 kilos on either side over here, cumulatively 17 and a half, 17 and a half. So now I got 70, 17 and a half, 17 and a half, 105 total. In terms of reps, less is more. I want to get more from that eccentric. So that first rep is all going to be about getting a super slow eccentric. Now, after that, the weight's release, and I'm working with sub-maximal weight. So instead of thinking about, wow, I really need to get a lot of reps after that, it doesn't have to be much. I don't have to do any reps after that. I got what I want out of that. So maybe it's just a good single. Or maybe I just want to work, okay, one super slow eccentric, because now I've really overloaded that eccentric, created this really robust stress going onto the tissues and a lengthening capacity, and then I want to parlay that into an explosive. Right, so now I'm going to go from a 5-0 XO tempo to a XXX tempo, meaning that I'm going to go down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then down and up fast for maybe 2 to 3 reps. So a super maximal weight, we're accumulating more weight by adding weight on the weight release hooks that's greater than my max, and then we can kind of play around with bar load. We can kind of play around with the reps afterwards. We play around with the time under tensions for that first eccentric. So a rep, let's just say that I have 105 in my max. I'm working up to 105 kilos. I have 17 and a half, 17 and a half, 70 kilos here. I'm going to do 1 rep with a 5-0 XO tempo. After that, reps 2 and 3 is going to be an XO tempo, meaning I'm going to go down and up fast. So when I set up here, come out the bar, remember I'm very controlled, I'm comfortable with that weight release hook, I'm comfortable with super maximal weight. I'm going to go down my first rep, 5, 4, 3, 2, weight release hooks hit, and now I'm up. And I've turned that straight shoulder cycle, that momentum to create really elicit a response of leveraging that eccentric and create an explosive effort. There's a lot of ways we can go with it, but very simply, anything weight release hooks, you got to think about now you have athletes and maybe a couple people working together, where can those folks be successful with? It's not a matter of what you can conjure up here without executing. It's what you can think about applying to increase the deficit with what you can execute. So super maximal weight release hooks, this is a really good method to think about with your athletes.